What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and today we are looking at something I've been wanting for almost 30 years. My God, I seem old. I'm only 36. I just turned 36 last week. But I want to say since I was about 5 or 6, I saw this. No, I was a little older than that. Maybe 7. I saw this. Many other kids saw it. And we couldn't believe that they actually made it, because back in those days, space travel was a big deal, and anything sci-fi that kind of dealt with space travel and spaceships and aliens and such, it was the shit, because that was like, it's real science meets fantasy science, you know what I'm saying? Almost all kids in the 80s who wanted to be astronauts until probably the Challenger explosion, but still, some of us still wanted to see space, and Hasbro knew that this was a thing and they capitalized off of it. Now, many times when you go on eBay searching for something like this in particular, any part of it, it's way overpriced, so a lot of us just look and we're like, you know, fuck it, someday we'll get it when it's cheaper, or when we win the lottery or some shit like that, or we'll get lucky. I think that I got lucky. I did get lucky. A fellow collector who wasn't so much into G.I. Joe happened to come across a second one of these, which is what I have in my possession, and sold it to me for an amazing price. And I didn't even think it was like going to be a real thing. My wife one day was like, "Oh yeah, I saw a Defiant on Craigslist," and I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" She's like, "Yeah, go check." So I checked, hit the dude up, and a couple days later, this was in my possession. So of course, as you can tell, we are looking at the G.I. Joe Defiant Space Shuttle Launch Complex. And I managed to get almost the entire, well, it's the entire thing. It's almost complete. There are only a few parts. I'm missing some guns and one of the like side areas with the stairs that go along the lower half. But this thing is an amazing piece of work. It shows you how much the toy game has changed in recent years. Because this thing went for $125 back in the day. You know what I mean? And it was the biggest, second largest G.I. Joe vehicle playset that was offered. The biggest being, of course, the flag. And the flag cost $100 back in the day. Now that thing goes for $1,000. This one's not too far behind. Most times it's anywhere from, you know, $500 or $600 to like $800 or $900. At Big Fun, they had it for $700. So, like I told the dude I bought this off of, I almost shat myself when I saw that he was selling it for well under that price. Maybe because it wasn't perfect. You know, there's yellowing and stuff because it's old, but I don't give a shit about any of that. The idea is something that I really wanted from my childhood resurfaced, and now I get to sit in awe of it every day when I come up to my man cave. So once again, we are taking a look at the Defiant Shuttle Launch Complex, the whole thing. The Gantry, the shuttle, and the booster. This thing is a monster. It's beautiful. It's large. It's well worth the money. So I'm going to go into it. It's kind of an overview, so let's get it started. So, oh man, this is why we collect, man. This is one of those things where, you know, I'm doing this review after having a shitty day, and something like this helps make things better, you know, because I remember the thoughts. And I remember, you know, marking this thing, circling this thing on the little pamphlet that you get in the G.I. Joe vehicles and stuff like that. There was like a pamphlet that had kind of a checklist, you know, where you get to see all the different vehicles that are going to be offered in the future. And I remember circling this shit when I first saw it, only to never see it in the store. This thing was shipped 1 per store. So like, if you saw it, you were lucky. I saw it in store maybe once, and I always saw it in the service merchandise and JCPenney catalogs, because back then that's what we did. Mom had her catalogs, so Christmas time came. Oh, and the Toys R Us one. We got the catalogs. But this thing is a monster. The shuttle piece, I'm sorry, the gantry hugs and holds everything in perfectly. As you saw in the previous picture, when it opens out, it takes up so much space and it reveals all kinds of things. You know, working elevators, there's 2 of them. There's different levels for your characters to stand on with guardrails and everything. There are gun ports all over the place, cannons, stairs on the sides, rails on the sides, ladders that you can access when the gantry has the shuttle in launch position. I mean, Jesus. Cannons everywhere. And on the lower half, there's cannon seats that are open where you can sit on there. And then there's the parts like you can see on the right-hand side, well, my right, your left, that are, I'm missing the windshield to the front one, but the side orange windshield is there. You can actually just have characters walk in there, and there's like a, almost like a periscope type deal on the black cannon to the left of the big red cannon, you know, above the windshield less area, above this right here. You can kind of see the periscope right there above the seat farthest to, it would be my right, your left again. It's just detail out the wazoo. I mean, like, they didn't spare any expense when it came to detailing this guy. And then, I mean, like, when you see this thing in person next to other figures, even figures of different scale, it's like, this is a monster, man. They definitely don't do this shit anymore. I have gripes, though, because the gantry is probably the worst part of the whole set because it's made of very brittle plastic, and they did that to keep down shipping costs. And pretty much, because they use lighter plastic, it's the part that breaks the easiest. A lot of times when you're cranking into launch position, it'll buckle underneath the weight or the mechanism that cranks everything. It'll snap, you know, because the booster and the shuttle are heavy. Now the booster and the shuttle are things of beauty. Sorry about this ghetto ass picture, but this thing is huge, man. So like, when I tell you it's huge, I mean, you saw my review station and how much it took. That's a drafting, it's a full-size drafting table, and it takes up more than half of the space on there. So anyway, the booster and the shuttle are both things of beauty. They both have lots of features, lots of things that they can do, lots of things for you to see. There's Easter eggs in the sculpt. It's just, it's beautiful. I especially love the cockpit. It's so dope. The whole control deck that kind of locks in place. It's like on a kind of a gear, you know, mechanism. So when you move one, both of them move. So you sit your people in there and you move one and both will lock into place. This is the open position. I'm going to show you a few more pictures of things that you can see that are going on, and then I'll show you the closed one. But you can just see it. It seats 3. You've got your pilot area and you've got your navigator and co-pilot area. That's awesome that they thought this through. And unlike a lot of the modern stuff, because you know how there's some modern Joe vehicles that don't necessarily work very well with modern figures, strangely enough, you can still use modern Joes in this. Even the bigger guys like Roadblock and actually all the versions of Roadblock, you know, what's his name? Bazooka, Heavy Duty, they all can fit. And they fit well. It doesn't stress anything. And I was amazed at that. Because there's no way they knew that Joes were going to end up looking and acting the way they do. Here it is in a locked position. But it fits around their waist snug and perfect, and you can position them typing and doing whatever they do. It's little things like this that put this thing over the top as being one of the best Joe vehicles ever produced. Little details like these pistons and, you know, mechanisms that open up the, you know, the bay, the cockpit bay. It's just little details like that that make it awesome. The freaking arm, there's like a extendable arm that is inside the cargo bay. And you would use that, obviously, to pick up whatever it is you need to pick up and store it. You could store other guys in there. There's lots of peg holes in there. But there's also a little hatch for you to go through to, you know, get outside of the ship, get inside the ship, or to gain access to other things, which I will show you in a second. But the arm has like a claw piece, and it's ratcheted, very tight ratchets. So if you want it to hold something, it will hold whatever you put in there. It actually, all of it is ratcheted to some degree, and it's actually pretty tight, pretty well done. And I mean, this is why you collect for these things that will blow you away, these small things that will blow you away. Because this was like 1987, I think, that this was done. The booster. This is the main. What do they call that? The control deck of the booster, and it's set up almost like Star Trek. I love it. The problem, though, is that the captain's seat, or, you know, command seat, is too. I shouldn't even say it's the seat. It's more that the roof is too low. So when you put someone in there, they're kind of obstructed by the roof. I mean, if I got down a little bit lower, you could see him a little bit better, and you can see that it's just that, you know, it's a height issue with the figure and the lowness of the roof, but it still looks good. In the back, I love the extra, the little door. You know what I mean? I love the, because the door actually leads to the back portion of the booster, and I'm going to get into that in just a second. I love the, there's a hatch piece on there when you have this all closed up. In this image, I actually had it opened up so I could get light in there so you could see it. But it's the right size so that people could walk through. I love this extra little sideways terminal, so this guy could play Galaga and no one would be noticing what he's doing. I'm just kidding. All you have to do is look over there and you would see it. He's just in the cut. But I just love the setup. You know, it just feels so like something you've seen in some type of sci-fi. Some type of sci-fi film. But the back, this here, is entrance into the space station portion, the base portion of the booster. And that by itself is a thing of beauty. Now, I'm not even going to stop talking. I'm just going to continue. This is your space station mode, when you dock the ship on the booster so that you can move your characters through it. Now, a lot of people have issues with this because the ship is actually, or shuttle is actually just being held on there by an indentation in the bottom half of it. And then you just sit it on top of the actual booster, you know, station piece, and it just sits there. So if you bump into it the wrong way, or you shake the table or something, you may be fucked, and you might end up breaking one of your the fins on the, God, what do you call those things? Rudders, fins? Anyway, you might break one of the pieces of the shuttle. But you know, I'm careful about that kind of stuff, and I wouldn't put it somewhere where, you know, we could bump into it. But opening it up allows for you to have your figures roam freely through it. The bad thing about this is if you have modern Joes and you want to use this with them, those pegs are for the old school Joes. They're too big for your modern Joes. So you won't be able to use the peg holes. And they put peg holes everywhere. There's peg holes on the floor and on the ceilings of every level, just about every level, which is cool, showing that they were thinking about zero gravity. What I plan on doing, and I'll probably show you guys with some, you know, a showcase video at some point, is I'm going to get some the Star Core or Star Force, the Core Star Force from back in the day, because they're cheaper than a lot of the astronauts for G.I. Joe, and I'm going to put them in here and probably change the heads out, and I'm going to use them as the Joes in, you know, in their space gear. But you've got terminals with computers and seats built in that actually lock. They don't lock, but they fold up into the wall. You've got engine detail. I mean, they really went to town on this, and they didn't go overboard. The engine details or the particle accelerator or whatever it is, it looks like an engine. You know what I mean? It doesn't look too sci-fi. Sleeping quarters, which are pretty cool. I forgot to say that on the first floor, there's a teleporter. So that piece you see underneath there is supposed to be a teleporter for the Joes, which I think is kind of funny, because if the Joes have that kind of tech, why'd they need to go to space? Just teleport where you need to go, you know what I'm saying? But they were trying to give you that full-on, almost Star Trek-ish experience with your Joes, and it's awesome, because, I mean, Think about all the imaginative things that those of you who had this thing, think of all the things you did because you saw what was there, because the designers were thinking like us. This area here where you see that swivel door, it's the airlock. The cool thing about that is you put your figure in the area to the left, you swivel it, they end up in this square portion right here. The square portion actually has two functions. It's, you know, you can either pretend like it's this is the outdoors once it's swiveled, or if you climb upward, it leads to the ship or the shuttle. I mean, that in itself is a thing of beauty because it's kind of self-contained cross-play to some degree. You know what I'm saying? You designed it so that these three pieces, or the two pieces, I guess, can be used together, and you get a lot of usage, you know, out of the whole thing, not just, you know, one piece more than the other. So you see the little hatch, little circular hatch? That right there is sitting right above the airlock. So even the fact that they thought about that, and there's like a little sliding piece on the airlock on the top of it that you actually have to slide so that you can gain access to the outside. It's freaking dope. I mean, they don't even think that far ahead in today's shit. You know what I mean? And today we have all kinds of techniques and all kinds of, you know, reference, and they could do the whole thing in ZBrush or freaking Studio 4D or Cinema 4D, I mean, and then, you know, or SketchUp or something, and then just feed it into a 3D printer and it's done, and they still don't think ahead like that. Here, they actually were trying to give you the experience that you would have seen in a sci-fi film, or that real astronauts are getting with the design of their ships. On the exterior, you have these fold-out guns with missiles on top as well. They're kind of tricky because you have to have the guns kind of aimed to a upper corner, and then they flip properly and don't get caught. A little bit more detail on the missile. But, I mean, it's cool because it's like you're showing the armament. And I know I left out the lasers that are on the bottoms of the shuttle. But the bottom line is this thing was one of those #1 things on our Christmas lists when we saw that this thing existed. We all wanted it, all of us that are Joe fans. It was a chance for us to take the Joes into space and do cool shit with them in a different area, because, you know, land and sea and the air were covered because you had your Sky Strikers and you had your Vamps and your various tanks, you know, your armadillos and all that shit, your maulers, whatever. And then you had your what do they call the sharks? You had your sharks and stuff like that, but you didn't really have anything for space yet. This scratched that itch, and I didn't get Payload. He was the astronaut that comes with the thing, but I don't care because I have a ton of Joes. You could use Skydive if you wanted to. You could put your what's his name, Ripcord in, you know, the special Ripcord that's wearing the same gear as Skydive. You could put him in there. You could put your Rise of Cobra Joes with their black and their armor in the shuttle, and it won't look bad. You know, you could use the freaking accelerator suits like space suits if you don't like accelerator suits. There's so many different ways that's actually a good idea that I never thought about. I might have to get more accelerator suits. But no, it's just one of those things where you can do so much with it just based on what you were given. And the design is just futuristic enough and just real world enough that 30 years from when it was created, it still looks good. You know what I mean? It still can stand next to the figures and vehicles that you have now and not look out of place. So I am besides myself, you know, with happiness that I've actually found this thing for a price that I could afford, and that I get to show my kids, like, look, this is old G.I. Joe. You know what I mean? At some point, you'll get this thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I'm going to eventually give my Joe stuff, or a good chunk of Joe stuff, to my son. You know, the older son saw this, and he went and he had given up on his Joes because he's too grown to play with toys, supposedly. He saw this and then dug his Joes back up and everything and wants to play with his toys now. Because this is the kind of shit that sparks your imagination. if you are even just a little bit of a big kid and you see something like this, you want to play. So make no mistake, this is totally worth it. If you can find one that's in decent condition, it may be missing guns, it may be missing, I don't know, parts of the lower portion of the gantry, get it and then build it up. You won't be sorry. There's no way you'll be sorry. The joy of playing with it, as long as the shuttle and the booster are together, and most of the time you can find them together, you just won't be sorry because you'll have fun with that, and then you can build up the gantry. And that alone is worth the price. I mean, the gantry has so many little pieces to it, a bunch of working parts. If you can find the right pieces to make sure everything works, and you find one that has a working crank that's in decent condition, just remember to use hand support when you use the crank and try to get the gantry in launch position, and you'll be good to go. This thing is worth it. It's fun. It's a beautiful piece of craftsmanship, and I don't know, I just think it's worth it so much. So anyway, this has been my review of the G.I. Joe Defiant Launch Complex. It's a holy grail of mine. I finally got to realize it, and I'm happy to share it with you guys. So that's it for me. It's been awesome to share this with you, and I hope you dug my video. I'm STRYDENT. This thing is awesome, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I will catch you guys on the next video. So, peace outside.